Welcome to Focus on the Five, conversations with Baldwin County business leaders and entrepreneurs, brought to you by Josh Knoll of Gulf Coast Financial Advisors. And now, Josh Knoll.
Hey, how y'all doing today? Josh Knoll here with Gulf Coast Financial Advisors, coming to you from downtown Fairhope, Alabama. I am joined once again by Mr. Jay Stubbs, the Regional Director of First Protective. First video that Jay and I did, I couldn't spit that simple statement out of my mouth because I was so nervous, but we've done this a few times before. Appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right. Jay had reached out to me earlier this week, and we kind of had a copacetic moment on an article that we both discovered. You discovered first from Forbes.
Right.
It was written by Mr. David Ray, and it has to do with the. I'm going to turn it over to you on that. You and I are going to sit down. We're going to talk about this Forbes article, and there were some things that you felt were interesting, and I agree with, and we're going to dive in a little bit and dissect some of the things that Mr. David Ray had to say, because we both felt it was a really good article.
Yeah. So Josh, what I found interesting is the title of the article is "The Rich Person Roth,"
right,
for the most tax-free retirement income, and I found that to be an intriguing article title. So of course I start diving into it because I have a feeling I know what he's talking about,
right?
And it's a concept that we know very well in our insurance planning world, but sometimes it gets skewed as an insurance topic of discussion versus a retirement wealth building discussion.
Right.
So we go on to read this article, and we find that David Ray is indeed talking about what some in the industry have called personal pension, others have called LIRP, Life Insurance Retirement Plan.
Okay.
Some have called it the Roth alternative. This fella out in California who I did email and exchange with, he's calling it the Rich Person Roth.
Okay.
And really what it boils down to is it's another way for an individual or a couple who has identified that a tax-free savings and a tax-free distribution of their retirement money may be a good thing to consider as they move into their overall wealth building portfolio.
All right.
We've got a Trump administration who's come out with a very robust tax plan where most people are paying lower marginal tax rates. However, there are certain states in our country that are going to actually be paying higher tax rates based on state income tax revenue. California is one of the examples. So this guy's out in California, he's writing this. But taxes are on the minds of a lot of people, right, especially for the new legislation that was enacted for 2018 and beyond.
Right.
It's no secret, USA Today just wrote an article yesterday that the tax deficit is $779 billion.
With a B.
With a B, and is projected to be $1 trillion in 2019. That's one with 12 zeros behind it. So those of you that are listening, write the number 1 and then write 12 zeros, and that's what the deficit is. And then we have debt on top of that, where the national debt, some people say, well, what's the difference between the deficit and the debt? The deficit is the difference between what the federal government is taking in versus what they are spending.
Right.
And then the debt is what the federal government has to go out there and borrow in order to pay, right, the deficits.
If you were a household, it would be, let's say that you're bringing in $75,000 of income, but you're spending $100,000. So you have a $25,000 deficit. Well, how are you going to finance that deficit?
Well,
a lot of households are probably going to be a credit card.
Yeah.
And now the credit card, that is your debt. That's your national debt.
That's correct.
And
So
that's basically what the UDIS is doing, running up a credit card debt.
Exactly.
Right.
So not to dive into the tax and the deficit discussion, because everybody can go online and kind of read that. They've even made the U.S. debt clock, which is kind of a neat little website, right, that people can go to. Right. Just Google that, U.S. debt clock. Anyway, the point that these folks are bringing up is, what's the way for the federal government to shore that up? Well, we're at the lowest income tax rates we've ever, not the lowest, but some of the historically lowest income tax rates we've ever been. Over the next 20, 30, 40 years, we may see increases in our tax rates.
Right.
If we see that, that's going to have an impact on the household wealth, specifically the retirement wealth that an individual or a couple is building so that they can spend during their retirement years.
Well, and like you said, no one has a crystal ball. But if you were to, you and I look at charts and numbers all the time. I mean, if you actually were to look at a chart of where the current day income tax rates look like in comparison. The only other time it's been historically even remotely this low, I think, was in the early 20s.
Yes.
And maybe even when they first introduced income taxes and they were like 7% for a couple of years before people realized, oh, this is a pretty good way to get some money in.
Yeah, so what we're going off the theory, and it's a pretty sound theory when you talk about deficit and debt. We're going off the theory that income tax rates could potentially increase over time.
Right.
That's going to erode one's ability to accumulate, and also if we're in an income taxable account, like a non-qualified type of account, in our investment portfolio, we draw money off that. We have capital gains tax. We could potentially have income tax liability, and in a qualified account, our IRAs, our 401ks. When we draw money from that, that's going to be at our income tax rate when we're drawing it off during retirement.
Okay. Do you mind if we go on a little segue on that?
Yes.
No,
I don't mind. Let's go into a segue.
Let's just, examples of qualified accounts.
Examples of qualified accounts. Primary is the 401k with your employer. Right. If you don't have access to a 401k with your employer, you can look at a traditional IRA, where you get a tax deduction.
You get a current tax deduction the year that you make the contribution.
Correct. If you like the whole concept and you're a sole practitioner or a self-employed, then you can do the SEP IRA, and if you want to do it for some of your employees because you have a small group of employees, you can do the simple IRA. Okay, so those are your primaries, the ones we hear about. Then we have the opportunities to talk about, well, I like the whole tax-free growth, and if I do this Roth, I'm using after-tax dollars, money from my regular checking account. I'm making a contribution into the Roth IRA. I don't get a tax deduction for it, but it's going to grow tax-free, and when I take money out of it, when I'm retired or over age 59 and a half, it comes out income tax free. That's a pretty good little deal.
Income tax free on all the growth, any distributions. Once you make that contribution to the Roth and it does its thing, you have paid, when you pay the tax on the income in that base year that you made the contribution, there's no more taxes due, correct?
Under current legislation, that's the way a Roth IRA works. And we as workers under the age of 50, we can make a $5,500 annual contribution to a Roth. If we're over age 50, you can make a $6,500 contribution to a Roth.
$1,000 per person, so that would be $11,000 per couple up to $13,000 per couple.
That's right. Now here's the catch.
Income.
If I make, as a single contributor to a Roth, if I make in excess of $135,000, then I am phased out of being able to do a Roth contribution.
All right, let's repeat that. As an individual earner, single filer,
correct.
If you make over $135,000, you're phased out.
Yes.
Right. Okay. All right. What about if you're married?
If I'm a married couple, or if I want to make a contribution, the phase out income limit is $199,000. Let's just call it $200,000.
Right.
So a married couple that like the whole concept of put money away, let it grow tax free, pull it out income tax free.
Right.
If we make more than $200,000 in the household, that concept is off the table for us.
Right. Right. Well,
insert David Ray's article.
There you go. All right.
The rich person Roth, the personal pension, the LIRP, life insurance retirement plan, for those that make in excess of that $200,000 threshold in a married couple environment, or in excess of $135,000 in a single environment, we can show them another vehicle that is an IRS sanctioned vehicle, that after tax dollars, make the contribution, grows tax free, and at some point down the road we will pull it out income tax free.
No more taxes due.
No more taxes due.
Doesn't matter what happens to because, and the reason that we are having this conversation to a certain degree, Jay, is on a 401k, traditional IRA, simple SEP, all that, it goes into the tax deferral bucket, right?
Right.
Now, when these plans became, you and I have done a video on this, when these plans really started becoming popular, was really kind of in the late 60s and 70s when income tax rates were, what was the top marginal rate? It was like over 90%?
Yeah, it was in the 90% rate, over 90%.
Forgive me if I'm off. We were just born then. We weren't paying that much attention. But it was high.
Yes.
And so people were thinking, how can I protect my income now so that hopefully I defer into a more tax-friendly tax situation, right? Well, now that that curve has flipped. So the point being is, Jay and I will never tell anyone that tax deferral is a bad thing. There's buckets of money that we can put these things into, but it's a legitimate question to ask. So if I'm a historically percentage-wise anyway, low rate, and I am deferring taxes on my investments and on coming off the income, what am I deferring to? No one can give you that answer, but we can have some common sense. I mean, you and I have been on Earth long enough to know we've seen trends.
We've seen trends, and we know where we are with respect to the deficit and the debt.
And you add that into it. It wasn't.
So if we're, if I'm a 25, 30, 35, 40, 45-year-old individual, and I'm looking at drawing money out at retirement age, which is 65, 67, 70,
right.
What are tax rates going to be at that time?
Right. Well, okay, so let's say, if you say that, if you sat down and you said, well, I think they're going to be the same or better, we're not going to judge you because we don't know.
That's right.
But what we can say is, then are you telling me that either the government is going to radically reduce spending in an aging population, or they're going to radically increase, or they're going to radically increase the debt to cover the gap? So those two things, how else are you going to cover it?
That's right.
Okay. So
we're not legislators. We don't make we can cast a vote for Congress and hope that they make the right decisions. But there's a lot of decisions that are going to need to be made, some very tough decisions with respect to the future of this country and the deficit and the debt. The point that I will also bring up is, even if somebody says, no, tax rates, I'm okay. I think they're going to be okay in 20 or 30 or 40 years when I start to draw money out. Okay. Well, let's now talk about your current lifestyle and what you spend on a weekly, monthly, and annual basis. Is the money that you're putting away for that, into that IRA, that Roth, that $5,500, and the money coupled with your 401k contribution, if you put all that together and then add some growth to it, compound that growth, is it going to reach the balance that you need at 65, 67, or 70 in order to draw off the annual income, pay the tax liability, whatever that tax liability may be, and maintain your standard of living? Is that the right number? Some people will look at you and say, no, it's not the right number. I need to find another way, another vehicle where I can contribute and make a contribution on an annual basis where my wealth, my retirement wealth, can build. And it just makes sense for us to consider that vehicle be a tax-free vehicle, where we put it in, it grows tax-free under current tax law, IRS sanctioned, and we can pull that money out income tax-free, IRS sanctioned.
All right. So you mean
riding the backs of what we call cash value life insurance.
Right.
And what's usually is the preconceived notion is, oh, Josh, I don't need any more life insurance. I'm good there. I've got my group plan. I've got the term plan you sold me. I've got some whole life over here. I'm good there.
Right.
What we have to understand is we're not getting this for the purposes of insurance protection. We're getting it for the purposes of that tax-free nature of tax-free growth of the cash value and the tax-free distribution of that cash value through the form of loans and withdrawals.
Okay.
The life insurance component is secondary to that primary concern.
Okay.
So if we do have a premature death, my family, my beneficiaries, my wife, my husband, my kids will be able to get that tax-free death benefit, which ultimately is just what would be the balance that I have shot for and I'm trying to hit that goal at age 65, 67, or 70.
And again, to circle back to part of our earlier conversation, you can get some of those things with a Roth, right?
You can, absolutely.
I was not saying that. What this article specifically refers to, it's called the rich person Roth. It's talking about, this article is really geared towards those that don't qualify for the Roth. And as you and I have discussed, Jay, even if you did qualify for the Roth at $5,500 a year, even if you believed that tax rates were going to just explode, you and I, we're going to retire in 20 years, and we think tax rates are going to explode. We got 20 years to max out a Roth.
Right.
How far are we going to get? We going to fund our whole retirement with that?
I don't think we will.
Right. I mean, raw numbers, I think 8% compounded growth on a Roth maxed out over 20 years. Check me, internet people, is somewhere around $250,000, maybe $300,000. Somewhere there. It's a nice chunk of change.
Absolutely. And you couple that with Social Security income. You couple that with any 401k balances that you have, or maybe even potential pensions at your employer. So yeah, it's going to be a complement to it.
And let me jump in. Let's say you're someone that can live on a lifestyle, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month. You might do the trick.
Yeah.
But if you're someone that's doctor, dentist, healthcare professional, someone that is not eligible for a Roth, you and I know this, what's not going to happen is you're not going to retire and drop your standard of living by 75%.
That's right.
It ain't going to happen. You can kid yourself all day long. You might drop it 25% if you're like the most disciplined client I've ever had, but you're not going to drop it by half.
So for the guy or gal out there that says, the question I like to ask is, the current contribution level for a 401k is $18,500 a year.
Yes.
The current IRA contribution is $5,500 a year. If the federal government, the Department of Labor, came in and said, we are now making that double, we're going to give you $36,000 401k contribution, we're going to give you $11,000 per individual IRA contribution, would you take advantage of that opportunity? If the answer to that question, because your cash flow is such that it makes sense, if the answer to that question is yes, I would increase my contribution to my 401k or increase my contribution to my IRA, then that person, in theory, would be a candidate for
having a conversation
about this potential opportunity.
And I don't know about you, but if the government came to me, what's the scariest phrase that can be uttered in the English language? Do you know this?
No.
I'm with the government and I'm here to help.
So, that's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
No offense, government people, but if if they came to that, then you got to ask yourself, well, why? I mean, what do they know that I don't?
That's right.
Right. Okay. And there's the thing, man. At the end of the day, it comes down to, when it comes to taxes and things of that nature, it comes down to people.
That's right.
And people are human beings, and especially with politicians, they have to make decisions with other considerations in mind. I'm not trying to give them a free pass. I'm trying to be devil's advocate here. Then you have to take that flesh and blood component and you got to mix it with hard math. Because at the end of the day, my mom was a math teacher, and I respected that and appreciated that growing up. But now that I've gotten older, I realize it's all math. It always comes back to the math.
Yeah.
And if you put it on paper and it doesn't make sense, it doesn't matter how much flesh and blood you throw at it, you're not going to wish and will your way to something that's going to work. So if we have hard math mixed in with these things where we think that there's potential for a higher income taxes down the road, so you're deferring to this environment, well, maybe you still have these tax deferral things in place, but don't you think it's worth a conversation to have some things where you've got some protection in case those rates really jump?
I definitely think it would be worth that because that individual or that couple will appreciate the fact that they have something that is not tied to the current tax code.
Right.
That they don't have to worry about paying taxes on it. Right. They don't have to worry about, in this particular concept, penalties for withdrawal of cash early. So if they want to start an early retirement, maybe 50, 55, well, you do that in a traditional qualified plan, you're going to pay a penalty. In this environment, if we want to use it as a backstop to our retirement plan, when we're 70 and a half in our qualified plan world, we're going to have that 3-letter word, RMD,
right.
Required minimum distribution.
Right. In
this particular concept here, we're talking about no RMDs,
right.
From a Roth alternative type of plan. Okay. So there's a lot of nuances here that somebody would find very intriguing.
Well, and market corrections,
yeah,
it plays a part too in some of this conversation.
Certainly, this can be this whole cash value life insurance. You can go with any company in the industry that offers a cash value life insurance contract.
Right.
There are different products out there. We won't get into the details of them in the weeds.
Well, and to be fair, you and I don't represent one company.
No,
we don't have one sledgehammer to go around and hit people over the head with.
It's just one.
We have a tool of tools,
yes,
a toolbox of tools.
It's one portfolio of products from which we can choose that best fits that individual or that couple's needs.
Love it. It was worth the conversation. Even 3 or 4 or 5 years ago when rates got bumped up a little, even then it was worth the conversation. Now with this tax reform that a lot of people don't realize goes away in 2025, 2026.
We have a sunset of 7 years.
7 years.
Yeah.
And at that point it reverts back to the old rates unless they make a change.
Yeah.
Right? Can't predict the future, but you can at least be prepared and you can have conversations about these things. And as you and I have made it very clear through the videos we've done and just how we live our lives and live our business, there is not one solution that fits every person.
That's right.
But if you're in a situation where maybe you don't qualify for the Roth, or even if you want to have the conversation about the Roth, and you're wanting to at least have some type of plan in place in case rates not only go up, but maybe they go up significantly.
Yeah.
Because the argument a lot of times that we get, that I hear, Jay, is, well, it's still a marginal rate.
Yeah.
And I agree with that, right? When you don't pay that high rate on the entire bucket of income.
That's right.
So we don't need to have fear mongering that you're going to pay 90% on every dime you make. However, generally speaking, when that top rate goes up, everything falls along with it. They don't generally speak just jump it up here. There's always a trend following to the whole thing that comes into play.
Yeah.
So even if your top rate is X now and the top rate goes to here, and you think, well, I'm not going to be making that kind of money then. Well, what if you are here?
Yeah.
And what if that is still higher than the top rate was? Worth conversation. All right, I'm going to give you an opportunity, if you don't mind, to kind of wrap up.
It's great to do these videos, and we're privileged to do some business with you through First Protective for your clients and your prospects that you're out there visiting with over here in this market. So, as always, good to be with you here on this, and let's do some more down the road.
Oh, this is great. Y'all, and Jay, what I've learned is we do have a lot of the general population, people not in the business watching these videos and things, but a lot of the interaction I'm getting are fellow advisors and agents and things like that. So this is a message for people like you, men and women. If you need a fantastic resource, if you're looking, either you're already in the independent world or you think about getting into the independent world and you're in the Gulf Coast region, you need to give this guy a call.
Yeah.
All right. So,
hey, by the way, I did add. If you go and Google J Stubbs, JAYSTUBBS.net, you'll get a landing page with my email address, my phone number, and a vast array of resources that somebody can use. So just remember that.
Well, aren't you cool?
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, my contact info and disclosure for both of us will be at the end of this video. Again, Josh Knoll with Gulf Coast Financial Advisors. This has been Focus on the Five. Mr. J Stubbs, Regional Director of First Protective. Appreciate you all, your day. Have a great day. Thank you.
See you later.
Thank you for listening to Focus on the Five. If you are interested in learning more about Josh Knoll and Gulf Coast Financial Advisors, you can find us at gulfcoastfa.com, call 251-327-2124, email josh.knoll@gulfcoastfa.com, or message us on Facebook. Focus on the Five is produced by Josh Knoll of Gulf Coast Financial Advisors. Advisory services offered through Investment Advisors, a division of Pro Equities Inc., a registered investment advisor. Securities offered through Pro Equities Inc., a registered broker-dealer and member of FINRA and SIPC. Gulf Coast Financial Advisors is independent of Pro Equities Inc. Information presented is for educational purposes only and is not an offer or solicitation for the sale or purchase of any securities. Focus on the Five offers commentary and generalized research, not personalized investment advice. Show content is for informational purposes only and does not constitute a complete description of our investment services or performance. All investments involve risk and unless otherwise stated are not guaranteed. Be sure to consult a tax professional before implementing any investment strategy.